Good evening. I'd like to call to order the special meeting for the Board of Education for Guthrie Public Schools for Monday, June 17th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Davis.
Present.
Salih.
Here.
Watts.
Present.
Pearson.
Here.
Flagg.
Here.
Bennett Johnson. Here. Smedley.
Here.
Madam President, we have a quorum.
Will you please stand while we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I request we just move the flag, because this side of the room can never see the flag. Every time we move it, it gets moved back. We just move it.
Figure out something.
We can do that. Would you please join me in a moment of silence before we begin our meeting? Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 6, discussion on transportation staffing, bus routing, and its impact on GPS students for the 2019-2020 school year.
As we went into the 2018-19 school year, with all the changes that we had, we had to figure out the impact that we would see on transportation. Until we started school, there was no true way to appreciate that impact. At the conclusion, really when we got about halfway through the year, we wanted to start looking at what our options might be for providing bus routes, and if we can reduce those bus routes, but also from a behavioral standpoint, one of the challenges that we faced for many years with the long bus routes that we have is the fact that we have elementary and secondary students riding on the bus together. When we looked at all of this and its impact, I asked Mr. Benson and Mr. Thompson and Mr. Ogle to begin looking at what our options might be. And this was in January when we have kind of leveled out our bus routes and all of the changes from neighborhood schools. And so they've worked with our consultant that we've used for the last couple of years to help us with our transportation department and on the routing and ways that we can be efficient and provide the services that our community expects. And so we have also had a committee that involved teachers and parents as they went over all of this as well to get their input. And I guess at this point I would turn it over to Mr. Ogle and Mr. Thompson. And I will say that the item 6 and item 7 are related without a doubt, but we kept it as two separate agenda items for discussion, but they will probably morph into one.
In front of you, you should have a packet that we'll be going over, so you'll be able to see that in case the light is bad. And then you have 3 documents that are labeled. A is a transportation expense that Ms. Chappell has put together, and so we'll refer to that. B is from transportation. It is our discipline comparing 2017-18 to 18-19, and it's labeled B. And then you'll have C, which is from our transportation expert that will look at the different busing and the costs that's associated over a 3-year term. So does everybody have those?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, how I'd kind of like to start today is when we started having these conversations, I think it was, Dr. Simpson talked in January, but when it really started talking back up again was probably in the middle of April, and Dr. Simpson said, let's look and see what staggered time would look like for our district. And so we decided to put a committee together, and there was a rep from each building. There was an elementary principal, a secondary principal, and then 2 parents. And then we had all our directors involved in that committee meeting. We met May 1st, And I started that meeting by telling them this is a chance to look at our transportation and come up with the pros and cons so I can present to the board. I made it clear that there was not going to be taking it to you guys. It was going to be a vote right off the bat. This was to come up with pros and cons so we could get that. They could go back to their sites. We were going to meet again on May 23rd. We had the rainouts, bad weather, so we weren't able to meet. But what we did was we communicated by email. And so the pros and cons didn't change from what they went back. And so that's what we're going to look at again. And so in this PowerPoint, you're going to see some of the information that was presented to them, and then the stuff that they presented back to us to present to you guys so you guys can have some information. So, digging into this, one of the reasons for looking at staggered times, lack of bus drivers to cover routes. We went from 24 routes to 21 routes when we went from neighborhood schools. Staggered times, if we were to do that, we would reduce 21 routes to 15. Since February 2019, we started losing drivers. One of the things I would say, we were down to 16 route drivers. When the economy has been bad since I've been here, we have had drivers. And when it gets good, they can go out and make more money. And so we've seen that during the 6 years that I've been here, the ups and downs of route drivers. So how do we cover those 16 routes? And then we have 5 more routes still to cover. So we have pulled our 3 mechanics that have CDLs, a route supervisor. Mr. Chappell's here. He's been called in the morning or in the afternoon to drive a bus a couple times. Been generous to help out when needed. And we've combined routes. When we combine routes, is we have 70 kids on a bus. And you know what's going to happen? Of course, that's going to lead to the discipline that you're going to see. And so what happens, we have enough to cover the 21 routes if everybody shows up for work. You guys know that's not going to happen every day. And so that's where we have to be creative, and we've called to ask, is there a coach that could come help drive in the morning or in the afternoon? And so some of those coaches, depending on where they're at in their season, have been able to help. Right now, we are still, I believe, unless we've had somebody pass the test, are we still sitting at 16?
Yeah, one more pass the test.
So we're sitting at 17? Okay. So we're sitting at 17 drivers right now. The overtime in transportation, this is on your handout A. You're going to see that was up almost $10,000 in transportation. And that comes from our 3 mechanics and our route supervisor for the most part. You've got to remember, we started school late, knocked off 10 days, plus we had the bad weather days. And so comparing transportation from last year and this year, that 10,000 is kind of deflated just a little bit because of the amount of days that we were in school.
I'm sorry, are you referring to Exhibit A?
Yes.
Okay, that has ran July through June. We received one of those in our committee meetings in March that ran September through March. So is there a reason we've backdated this report to July?
I might refer this back to Michelle. Michelle updated this. This one is updated to last Thursday. And so, is that
so that we
correct?
can have a full picture of the entire fiscal year. That was through March, and so we had a snapshot roughly right until spring break, and so that we can compare fiscal year 18 to 19.
I understand that, but in committee, we were told that transportation really didn't incur much cost since school didn't start till September. So the one that we got in committee in March is September through March, which I understand since we got this in March, it cuts off in March. But is there a reason that we started it in September and now we're looking clear back to July?
Yes, because our mechanics and our route supervisor, there's 2 of them, are working June, July, and August as well. So there are people still working. And we have the enrollment, which takes us 12 hours, and 1 to 2 days we do that part of it. So there's a cost for July and August.
Okay, we just did not see that in March then.
Now, I asked to prepare the September to March comparison from this year and last year because that's when we started school.
Yes.
So I wanted a comparison of operational costs while we were busing the kids.
Okay.
And so it's really not the same, it's not really the same reason that we have.
Right, but it's the exact same form, it's just ran for different months.
Yes.
Okay.
So on handout A, you can see the difference there of the overtime that's on there, and I think Gina pointed out. Any other questions on just the overtime of looking at that handout A? The maintenance, that is on the middle of A, and it's highlighted in there in yellow, and we did a 5-year comparison there. Maintenance and repair costs went up almost $49,000 from 18 to 19. It's hard to pinpoint exactly. We had a couple of big bus issues. We had an engine go out. Cody, what else did we have? Transmissions went out. But at the same time, as we know that we couldn't be working on those buses and monitoring them if our bus drivers are out driving as well. That's hard to quantify that, but we do believe that had something to do with that big expense of repair going up $48,000. If you look at it over that 5-year window there that we're looking at, you can see that went up quite a bit of money, especially from 3 years ago when it was $40,000. And so just some information to look at when we started trying to come up with some things. And the bus referrals went from 279 in 2017-18 to 435 in 2018-19. And so on your B, transportation pulled these, you can see it per site. Of course, the 17-18, you're not going to have Charter Oak on there, but you can see where all the discipline referrals came at per site for bus transportation only.
Question, when did we stop leasing buses?
We paid off the last lease probably my first year,
Which was?
2012.
Okay.
I think that was the tail end of, maybe we had 2 that were on the lease, the rest of
I
them.
know you don't like this question because I know how you feel about it, but don't maintenance costs go down when you're leasing buses because you can turn them back in?
Well, we were on a lease purchase with those. They weren't a lease turn back in.
Okay.
On all of the ones that they had negotiated prior to my arrival, they were all on a lease purchase, not a lease agreement.
Okay.
Refreshing.
Has the average age of our bus fleet changed from 2014-15 to 2018-19?
Yes, it's gone down.
It's gone down?
Yes, we had, in 14, I believe we had, my institutional knowledge has left us on this, but I believe we had like 8 or 10 2002 models. How many are we, Cody, how many of those 2002s do we have on the road now?
There are some that still be able to be on the road, and they're not part of the regular route buses.
Yeah.
One goes down, there's backup bus.
And that's, the fleet is in a lot better shape than it was in 14.
But yet our costs went up significantly.
That makes sense.
I left this one slide up here and I made it number 1 because it is a big priority. I want to talk a little bit about what happens when we get to where we cannot cover the routes, because this happened my first year 6 years ago. Me and Mr. Rainwater were principals at the junior high, and in the spring of 2014, we did not have enough drivers. And so what had to happen was they staggered times. Most of the time in the morning they could find enough drivers. It was the afternoon, and so they would pick up at the normal time at 3:10, 3:15, and they would hold 4 or 5 routes, and they would take everybody else home and come back. And the earliest route usually got back to the junior high about 5 o'clock, and the last one, if we were lucky, was out at 5:30, 5:35. So kids were getting home 6:30, 6:45. And so this is one of the reasons why, number 1, I wanted to put it up here by itself, is because that was a big chore on us as principals, because everybody else is off contract time at 3:40, 3:45. And so as principals, I was lucky me and Mr. Rainwater were working together, but the elementary principals are there by themselves. And so if they have something going on that night, they're obligated to be there till that last kid leaves. And so that's a big responsibility. And so I wish we wouldn't have to talk about that, but that's reality of what happens and what's happened in the district. just 5 years ago when we didn't have enough drivers. Anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Number 2, reasons why we looked at staggered times was to reduce ride times for students. In theory, when we went to neighborhood schools, we were trying to get down and cut that number down. We still have some kids that ride a bus, correct me if I'm wrong, about an hour and 50 minutes?
Yeah, we're usually back at 4 or 5, an hour 45 minutes from that.
Okay, hour and 45 minutes.
Compared to, we're getting back at 5:30 or even 6 o'clock on some of them, we had the grade cycle.
And what happened, I think what Cody's mentioned, to tell me if I'm wrong, Cody, is when we had to start combining and we have some of those 70 kids on the bus, those are those kids that are still getting home late. Before we had to start doing that, combining routes, when we had the 21 drivers, we had decreased that, and it was about an hour and a half. And so when we talked to transportation, the guy that helps us with our software has been doing it for many, many years. He thought that if we went staggered times, I'll talk about the 50 minutes here between why he thought that in a little bit, but he said that we would have an hour or less per ride. And so anyway, that was a big thing to us when we started looking at an hour and a half per kid on the bus or getting home for an hour. Another one's number 3, eliminate elementary and secondary students on a bus together. I've had a son that's rode a bus, and he's learned several things that he shouldn't have when he was elementary from secondary kids. And we've had to explain that in the evenings when he came home and asked us questions. And so, I think that's an important thing. One of the reasons why we were looking at this is because we would be able to put elementary kids on with elementary kids. And that would be our all the way up to 6th grade, and then secondary would be 7th through 12th. And so if anybody was curious on that. We just talked about the overcrowding on buses with the 70 kids. And then 5, potential to save money. This one's probably a big one for me, dealing with personnel. It's been no secret, we're trying to save some money because what I would like to do is be able to pay our staff more money. So if we can find some ways that we can save some money, we'll be able to put that back in and hopefully be able to increase our salary schedule to be more competitive with some of the districts that are around us. And then 6, reduce traffic in town. We have reduced traffic in town by going to neighborhood schools, but by taking elementary and secondary, I think it would reduce more. And that was kind of when we talked as a group. These are the 6 things that we thought were important when we were looking at why staggered times.
Doug, I'm just not getting something. Cody needs to, I guess, can explain it to me. People live in the same places, so the time to get there is the same amount. Is a route one bus one time, or is a route one bus going twice? One's for the young kids and one's for the older kids?
It's one for the younger and one for the older.
So there's actually more routes then?
No, we're not talking apples to apples here, because the grade school count is different than the secondary count. You understand that? So we're not going to the same houses on both routes. I'm not doing it. It's a completely different setup.
So to answer your question, right now we have 21 routes. We want 21 routes in the morning, 21 routes in the afternoon, so 42 routes. And so with the staggered times, with what Dale has presented to us, would be 15 routes for the elementary, 15 for the secondary, so 30. So in all, you're going to go from 42 to 60 routes.
Okay, that's not the way the numbers were reading to make it sound that way.
You're going to see some numbers here in a minute that shows that.
Okay.
Okay, good question. Okay, from our staggered time committee, from the staff and our parents that were on the committee, some of the 3 of the biggest pros that they come up with was to reduce the bus time for students, reduce discipline by buses by keeping elementary and secondary students separated, and to reduce the overcrowding on buses. And so that was pretty common amongst every site. And the parents and the information that we got back, those were the 3 that were the most common, and so we kind of agreed with that.
Interject here. It's when you're on a bus for a shorter amount of time, you're going to reduce discipline, and that's something that was a target. Is trying to, as we reduce the amount of time the student rides the bus, that will reduce the discipline.
Now, to the cons. There were several cons, very voiceful, understandable. It affects everybody in different ways. It affects everyone in here different. And so child care for GPS staff was the number one that was brought up. If we're looking at staggering times, you're going to have some that are elementary teachers that have secondary kids, and when do they drop those off? So child care was a big one. Second, not too far off, was secondary athletics. If we staggered start times and it was later, that meant that some of the sports would be getting out of class and losing class time to go to a JV game. And so pushing secondary athletics maybe further, practice time, so kids wouldn't be able to get to work till later. And so those were some big things. Mr. Chappell was in that as well. And so we kind of discussed some of that with the committee. The Meridian Career Tech students, I believe they catch a bus at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to Stillwater. And so there was some concern that those Career Tech students may miss out on, if they're still leaving early and school got out at a different time, they may miss out on a section or two. So that was a concern. Number 4 was loss of staff. There were some people just thought that we would lose staff because of childcare. I mean, it's just call it what it was. It was, if I can't do this, I'm going to have to find another job because it's going to cost me money to put my kids in childcare to help to offset that distance between the staggered times. And the 5th one was another major change in the district. I said that we would just have change after change, that like a year that there wasn't any change in the district. And so those were the 5 concerns that came from the staggered time committee.
If you went to the VOTEC, I still asked this question in committee and it hadn't hit. If you go to the VOTEC at noon, let's see, your afternoon VOTEC, and we start the high school later, you've lost an hour of high school education. Is that not correct?
You would lose it, yes and no, because what the Meridian has done is, let's just say it's a science, math, or English, you guys vote on that to be credit. And so instead of getting the 3 or 4 hours of, let's say, welding to be able to go over there, if they were going to lose that, they would offer, instead of 4 hours of welding, they'd offer 3 hours of welding. You could take one of the classes that you would miss at the high school. So you may get a science, math, or English. I think it's science and math is the 2 that they offer. I don't think they offer English. But we vote on that, we send that to you guys, and you guys vote that they can take those classes for credit, and we do that in August, I believe.
So
It
right
still looks
now,
like an hour of education is being missed to me. That's what I'm not getting.
so currently, right now is the way the current time is. The VOTEC kids, they get on the morning VOTEC kids get on the bus, say what, 7-ish,
7 o'clock,
and then they return around the 11:30ish.
right around lunch.
Okay, 11:30 noonish. Is that
11:30, and then I think the bus leaves at like 12:15 maybe.
if we go to staggered time? That 11:30 is what hour? Is that 3rd hour? If we start at 8:55, if we start at 8:55, and then we at 11:30 when these kids return, what hour are we in? Are we in 3rd hour? If we start at 8:55 at the high school?
It would push everything back, and I would say that that would probably be true. Without seeing it in front of me, I don't know for sure. I don't have if we were to do this, I'll show you times. I wouldn't say at 8:55. Those were just when we were discussing stuff, somebody said, well, what would times be? And we said they decided that they needed 50 minutes. But I'll show you on some
Okay.
slides. But I don't know your answer until I look at the high school schedule.
I guess my point is the VOTEC kids sitting there waiting for a next hour to occur, or because they start their day at 7 and they're not going to end till 3:55. So I guess
Yeah,
I'm
the
asking.
day is longer for that, going to that career tech. And it's an hour earlier now, they don't have to be there till 8:15. And they're still leaving at 7. But it's even longer depending on when that staggered time would start. And that's your point.
Yes.
Yes, and that would be accurate.
Okay.
School start time comps, we pulled these just to look what other districts are doing. Made phone calls, talked to their transportation. I'll let Cody talk a little bit on this. We made some phone calls as well. The majority of these schools started staggered start times because the same reasons that we put up there was, one, they could not get enough bus drivers. If you go back, you can Google it right now. I I believe it was the beginning of the school year of 18, or maybe in the 5th, Edmond was 29 bus drivers short. I know it was all over the news, everybody probably saw it. Last year, I know that Perkins started the school year. I believe that they have 14 bus drivers, and they were down to 6. They canceled every route that was inside the city limits, and they sent out just outside of city limits until they were able to get enough bus drivers. So anyway, the thing I would like for you to look at here is not every school has the same start time as whether it's high school or elementary. And that kind of shocked me a little bit, because when you start looking at research shows if you are going to do staggered times, the older kids need more sleep, and so they would start later. Well, that's not true with every school. Edmond starts high school at 7:40 in the morning, and their elementary have 2 different staggered start times, one at 8:25 and then one at 8:50. If that's right, yeah. And then you can look, just use Stillwater, for example. Their high school starts at 9 o'clock. And so that was why it was a little bit surprising to me looking at that. Not everybody was the same. I expected really to look and everybody's secondary was later, but it's not what fits your district. And so when we talked to the transportation people at these different sites, the majority of them said it was because they just could not keep enough bus drivers. And so they either had to cancel routes, combine routes, and so the same conversations that we're having today is what they have had over the last 2 or 3 years when they had to go to staggered times. And so wanted to put that out there just to show everybody kind of what our surrounding schools are doing that have demographics that are similar to ours. Here's some cost projections if we move to staggered times. Additional cost and fuel expense, this is kind of what Janae was talking about. We're going to drive more routes. I just told you guys from 41 routes, we're going to go to 60. So if you're going to drive more routes with less buses, you're going to have more fuel expense. So if you look on C, you can see the 2019-20. He has the expense down there, how many miles, the 180 days, average miles per gallon, and it comes up to $37,514 more in fuel is what he's projecting that it would cost if you went staggered time. The second bullet point I have is projected savings in salaries. If we went from 21 drivers to 18, why I put 18 on there, I know we're not going to keep filled if we said 15 and still have enough bus drivers. So I was saying if we kept 18, and that way we would have spare drivers when we have all those people that are out for sickness, so we didn't have to use our mechanics unless it was just at the very least. And so this one is a savings of about $51,500. Like I said, we could get that over $100,000 if we went to 15. I don't think that's realistic, just because the fact is we have a hard time right now. You just heard Cody talk about we're sitting at 17 drivers. Here's what we've ran into. One, when we get them to sign up, they'll come with us, they'll go through all the training. If they can pass the test, they'll stay with us about a week or 2, and then they leave. They don't leave for another school, they leave to go out and go to the trucking business. They can make more money going out and doing the trucking. Because there's a 3-hour window that they have in the morning that they drive, then they're off, and then they have 3 hours in the afternoon that they drive. And so driving to Edmond really doesn't pay for itself by the difference, of pay. I think Cody may talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And so, anyway, that's kind of what we were thinking about when we talk about projected savings, from 21 drivers to 18. Third bullet point, we believe we can save about $25,000 on transportation, bus maintenance. You saw earlier on the 18-19, the cost maintenance repair went from $76,000 to the $125,000. We really believe, looking at that 5-year window in that highlighted area, that some of that was contributed to our maintenance people. And so, again, that's a guess. When we looked at that, we tried to use that 5-year window and make an educated guess there, but we think that we can save about $25,000 there. And then the projected cost savings, which is very disappointing to me, because I thought I was getting excited because I thought we were going to, if we did this, we'd be able to save some money, so we put that back into teacher salaries. But it's really not about money when you're talking $38,000. That is all. It's not even. That would not even pay a complete teacher in our district, and so that was a little disappointing to me. because I was hoping it was going to be a bigger savings if it was something that you guys decided to do, that we could be able to pay our staff more. Any questions over the cost projections and how we got to those numbers?
Yes, so I mean, so you're saying the 25,000 in savings, you're saying that that's the cost of deferred maintenance?
No.
I mean,
What we kind of tried to do is we went and said, okay, 125,000 was the highest in 2018-19. We kind of looked back, and 17-18 was the 76,000. We took into consideration the motor that went out, the transmission that went out, and kind of looked and said, okay, over this window of this 5 years, why was 2016-17 40,000? What were their big ticket items? And if you go back 15-16 was 42,000. So we know the cost is going to go up because we're driving more. We're going to drive 18 more routes. And so looking at that, we just thought that we could cut that in half. Like I said, that's an educated guess. It could double. It could be 200,000.
I mean, it seems to me if you're talking 5-year windows, if you double your bus routes in 5 years, I think you're taking on 10 years worth of maintenance in 5 years.
I think some of it.
I can't see how we're saving money.
I think some of it is maintenance that we can take back in-house if we don't have our mechanics out driving.
Yeah, I understand that. So, I mean, there's some deferred costs, the deferred maintenance costs. But really, these numbers to me, I mean, are really incomplete unless we take in the cost to purchase buses. Because if you're running twice as many routes, not only do you have diesel, suddenly you have, accelerated depreciation of your assets. So I don't know how these numbers, man, they just don't seem like solid numbers unless you take into account of your buses. I mean, now, I know I assume we're going to have fewer buses. Would that be an accurate
Yeah, instead of 21, we're going to have 15.
So, I mean, so you have fewer buses, but now you're going to have to replace them more quickly. So, I mean, that's some big numbers we're dealing with. So I don't know how, I mean, unless I'm missing something, these numbers don't mean a whole lot to me unless we look at the big picture on that.
And I don't know how to put a number on what you're talking about. I mean, we discussed that, and so.
Well, we know how many miles we run. We know about how many miles a bus is good for. So I think we could put some numbers on that, really.
And we can look at that again. I mean, when we put this and we asked Dale to kind of run these are kind of some of the numbers that we received.
I have just a clarification question. You had mentioned we would be running less buses. We will have less buses or less bus routes?
Less buses, more bus routes.
More routes. They'll be doing double duty, basically.
They'll run around twice in the morning, run around twice again.
But if we have fewer buses, it could be the cost of that asset or that bus. I mean, over a 5-year or 10-year window may be about the same if you're having to. But that's what I'm saying. We don't have those numbers here. So I don't think in a cost-benefit analysis, you're really going to be able to determine what your savings are.
And with the variables, the variance of our roads, as we all know, in our school district, some of them are, they don't do a lot of damage to our buses, and some of them do a significant amount of damage to our buses every time we drive them. And thankfully, we're not having to run our routes today because with some of the roads out there right now, who knows if we can even run them.
Are our bus drivers, you said they're 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. If they run the 2 routes in the morning, two routes, are we paying more hours? Can they complete that in 3 hours?
Not considered. Dale said that they would be able to still get them in that time frame, and that's why we're talking.
They will be able? Because I thought Cody said no.
That's why we're trying to get the routes, both routes, in 1 hour each, so they can get back in their 3 hours. We don't want to have to go over it. And that may be the exception. We have 2 routes that we all know are out there. One's on the east side, one's on the west side. And they go way out there on both sides. They may go farther than the hour, but we're doing that now anyway. So but the rest of them should be an hour, and on both of the routes and both go in and out. So it should be able to stay at 3 hours. And this is, Travis, this is simply about, can we cover the expectations of the service that you're asking us to serve, okay? We're at, I was wrong when I told Doug, I thought he was going to talk about 15. We are at 16 drivers right now, okay? If they all come back, this is going in my 4th year, this coming fall. And I never had every driver, we ask them every year in May, are you coming back next year? Everybody checks the box, gotta be that. Like last year, we had three drivers who come back to work. So I expect, and that's happened almost every single year. I expect one or two of them may not show back up in August. That's just the way it goes, okay? We got to find a way, and every school district's going like this. Like some of you guys in the committee have heard me say this. I live 3 hours away. When I go home, I see all the buses sitting out there. Bus drivers needed. You'll see them right now. And we're checking out on the websites for what their hourly wage is and everything. Almost every single employment thing has needed bus drivers on their website. It's a situation we're dealing with. And like Doug said, I would say of the last 10 people that quit, last 10 drivers that quit, 9 of them went to other jobs besides the bus driver. None went to Edmond. The other 9 got sanitation, whatever truck driving service we can drive for. That's just what happens in these times when the economy is good. It's a unique situation. These guys show up at 5:30 in the morning. They work until about 8:30 or 9 during that time frame. They go home, do whatever they did, and they come back at 2:30 and do it all over again. It's unique. It's not like the custodians or the food service workers or parents or anybody else that work at 7 to 4, wherever their hours are. They work a split shift. And what's happening with all this is our mechanics are coming in at 5:30 every morning, and they're going home every evening at 5:30. They can't leave until all buses are back. When we have one breakdown, they have to go get that bus. We have to get a tow service to go get that bus. And then we put a tow truck to bring back the bus. So it's a 12-hour day for those 3 mechanics. One of our mechanics drove the same route the entire school year because we were that short-handed. We never got that's 2-3 hours in the morning, 2-3 hours in the afternoon. And then sometime in the middle of that work shift that they're working, they got to repair our buses for them. That's where the cost is coming in. Yeah, we have like an engine or sitting, we got a transmission. But some of it's just simple stuff we don't have time to fix right now. Will that cost come down? I don't know.
So Cody, I'm not trying to challenge you on why we're doing it. I agree we need to do a better job. And we need to do this for the right reasons, and I agree that we have a problem. If we're going to make a decision based on the economics of it, then that's a different conversation. I just want to make sure we're looking at good numbers.
This is trying to provide the service that the public and the parents expect us to do in an orderly way that it makes sense to do for us. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And so if it comes with an increased cost, I mean, it's still probably the right thing to do. It just, if we're basing our decision on the economics of it, then I was just saying I think we need to consider,
for instance,
the cost of the buses.
Shawnee, this flat does this. And it was driven by the superintendent and by the board and everybody else that they started at 10 years ago, there were 24 routes. They went to 15, and 2 years ago they went to 11. Simply because they couldn't find enough drivers to fill the routes. And it was based simply on, and it's what's going on with Edmond and everywhere else, Deer Creek and Piedmont and everywhere else. To provide the service, we've got to do something with the routing we've got going on right now because it's not working.
Travis, I think to your point is, that's why I said, even my projected, it's not about the money, because even if I probably projected way too low, because we may not even save any money, it may cost us more. And so if we're just doing it for the reason everybody heard was, oh, they want to save money, well, that's not it, because I think it's probably going to be more money by the time you put in the appreciation of the buses and stuff like that. So
I remember what it was like when I would leave the office at 5:15 and follow a bus out of town going south delivering kids that had already run one route, and they're full of kids that have been sitting in a school since school let out at 3:15 and just now getting their ride home. And the original reason I wanted to look at this was to separate elementary and secondary. And then this problem continued to worsen as the school year went on.
So, from me, not from anybody else, but from me, kind of when I talked to Cody a little bit, I think if we were to go to staggered times, here's what I would suggest is a 7:45 a.m. to 2:45 and an 8:35 to 3:35. I'm not saying who goes first, elementary or secondary. As you can see that would be something that would have to be talked about. Now the 50 minutes in between, let's kind of talk about that. Why 50 minutes? Who came up with that number? Because when they said 50 minutes to me, I looked at Cody and said, they'll never ever go for 50 minutes. I said, it's too big a gap. And so we got back with Dale at the transportation and said, what can we do? He's our expert. To get to 30 minutes, we were going to have to go to 26 bus routes of staggering time. And so that was not going to work because we can't fill the ones that we have now with 21. And so to get the buses, he said, this is going to be very tight at 50 minutes to be able to get buses into town, drop everybody off, and then get ready to go back out to the country to pick all the other kids up. So then I asked, okay, because what we were first looking at was elementary going first, secondary going last. I said, let's flip it. Let's look and see. And in my mind, I was thinking there's not as many secondary kids that ride a bus, so can we knock that 50 minutes? And it didn't budget. And so, anyway, we looked at it both ways, and that's just what the routing system guy says that we need if we're going to do staggered times. It's 50 minutes, and it wasn't going to budge unless we could find more route drivers, and then that defeats why you'd want to go to the staggered time in the first place. Cody, you got anything to add on that?
Get it right on. Because when we looked at going to, I think Doug asked me going to go to 45, it was adding 9 more routes. It just, every 5 minutes, it adds more routes to it, like Doug was talking about.
I think this highlights something that it took me a year to wrap myself around with our district. There is no district like our district when it comes to transportation, because we have several challenges that continue to make it difficult for transportation. We have more students that live outside the city limits than live inside. We have a very large geographical footprint with 232 square miles. Then the other item that makes it more challenging is the fact that most communities grow from the center of the community out, and we are growing from the outside in. And it has helped with Charter Oak, and we have cut drastically some of the kids' ride times, but we still have some challenges there. And then with the fact that we've tried to cut routes, but then you add on top of all that the challenge with getting bus drivers, which is something that we've dealt with before. It all works together for a really bad situation coming together. So.
I'll just finish. I have questions as my next slide, but I just go back to the school start times. One of the things that Piedmont just came out with, the biggest two issues, I believe, from the committee were GPS, childcare, and athletics. And so one of the things that Piedmont did was they decided as a board, it was publicized all over the news, is that they provided free childcare. And so that's something, as a board.
For their staff. For their staff,
that's what I said, yeah. That's it, for their staff. And so the question would be, I guess you could ask John, is we get out now at 3:15, is if we got out at 3:35, does that make a big impact with athletics? And so those are the two things that, if you're looking at it, are the two big concerns. I know we have some other concerns of other people in the room, but those are two big concerns that came from the committee. And so that's the information that I gathered from the committee and from the specialist for the routing. And so if you have no other questions, I'm going to go sit down.
I do. You said free childcare, but okay, so the teachers are in a situation where they're going to have kids that are not going to be at the start time reporting there. How are they going to get to their schools? Where's the childcare going to be held, and how are we going to get them to their schools if they have free childcare?
from what I understand what Piedmont did when I called, made a few calls, they just arranged and paid a stipend for a staff member, just like what we pay for a lunch duty or an extra duty. And so, give you an example.
At the child's school, where the child is.
Yeah, and so let's just say that Robbie has a daughter that's in elementary, secondary, and so we said the elementary, let's just say elementary was the 8:35 start time. And so we would provide an hour and pay somebody a stipend for an hour to watch the students that are at that school. And so Mr. Rainwater would be able to drop his kid off at that school an hour early, and they would have supervision during that time. Secondary would be the opposite. It'd be in the afternoon. It'd be the 1 hour in the PM. And so all that would have to be worked out. I don't know what that would look like. That's some of the things that other schools were doing to be able to provide, so it wouldn't be a cost, additional cost to the faculty.
Thank you.
Doug, we had a conversation the other day. Can you reiterate the benefits, the kind of the pay range for bus drivers, so we can talk about that? And I mean, is the thought process given to improvements on that to create more incentives?
Yeah, Ron and I had a good conversation the other day. We didn't agree on everything, but we had some good conversations. But no, bus drivers start out right now at $12.50 an hour. They get full health insurance if they take that out. If they don't, they get what's called cash in lieu of. Jan, correct me if I'm wrong, $189?
$189.60.
That they can get additional to their check. They also get an additional $104 added to their check with what the legislators gave them in $12.50 last year. They get all their teacher retirement paid. That doesn't cost them anything. And then they get a life insurance policy that the district takes out. And so the $12.50 starts with a zero level driver, and it can go all the way up to $18 an hour. What Ron and I talked about was, do we increase that? Do we make that gap more to try to entice? I don't know that you can give them more when 9 of the 10 drivers were going to work for UPS or wherever they were going to work, and not affect the, and this is my opinion, this is where me and Ron we were talking a little bit, was not put our teachers out there, because our teachers are still kind of lower in the districts around them, and it seems like if we're going to pay a lot more for a support person, why aren't we doing that for our certified? And it was a good agreement. We had some good dialogue back and forth of why, if you can't get them to school, you know, that's the thing. I said, well, we can't get them to school, then we don't have a quality teacher maybe there because they left for another district. And so those are conversations. There's no right or wrong answer, but those were just conversations that Ron and I had. What can we do to entice to get more drivers?
And I'm curious too, our bus maintenance staff, our mechanics, what are we paying them, and what's that equate to over time?
He said 15.
And I'll say this, this is where Doug and I kind of go, we have a dialogue. I believe when I got here 3 years ago, we were in the top, I won't say we were number 1, number 2, but we were up there in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in our pay for bus drivers. Just me doing quick checks on 13 or 14, 15 sites, all but 2 of them were above us. Those 15 I looked at. So what they've done, what other districts have done is, and we did back in 18, we had to have a swim lane driver and things like that. They've increased their hourly wage for the bus driver. So we're down there some. Does it affect our recruiting? I don't know how you determine that. I do know that we have 4 employees of Edmond School District Transportation Department that live in Guthrie proper right now. And the business is because Edmond starts off more than we start off at, considerably more than we start off at. And so we can't get them here. The country because of the pay difference. So I will say that, and Doug and I talked about that, you bring the teachers. I understand the teacher thing, I really do. But I'm also fighting for my staff too. So we have dropped it, and everybody's starting to pass this some, and it's starting to spread out there a little bit. We're talking $13, $14, $15 an hour, some are even more than that in the outlying areas that are paying their drivers more. But in the middle of the city, $16 an hour. So in the middle of Mid-Del. So there has been you come here for that kind of money, what we're asking these people to do. So.
Give you an example, Ron. $1 raise for a 6-hour employee, 180 days. If you did the math, it's like almost $1,200. That'd be a $1,200 raise. So and then you got a little bit of matching that we have to do on the district, but that's what their raise would be. Anybody else? I'll be back in the back if you guys have more questions.
As you can tell, we don't, as a staff, completely agree on the solution to this problem also. One of the things that, and Mr. Ober and I have had some robust discussions about this as well. When we made a big shift in our salaries, the question is, did it make a difference, or because that was also somewhat coincided with the energy sector going down in their in the economy, and so what was the reason that we got drivers then? Was it the energy sector beginning its collapse, or was it the difference in pay? And the answer is probably a little bit of both. I do believe that as we grow and where we're growing as a district, this is a split start time is inevitable at some point. I do believe that. And because of geography, that 15 minutes may be a reality that we have to face.
So, speaking of geography real quick, I kind of looked at this last week, real quick, on an area I've been before that has basically the county is the same size, Cherokee County is the same size as Logan County. But the school district is different. We're 232 square miles, I think. Taco Public Schools are 175 square miles, so we're in a ballpark. They travel daily about 930 miles a day on the route. When you take the 5A, 3,500 kids, about 1,300 students a day, they pick up and drop off and share. They come out we do here. So the shares and drop off identical, except for the mileage. And when they're driving 930 square miles, 930 miles a day, we're driving 2,000 miles a day. And that's what we're up against right now. And you can go past Broadway, and I call Dr. Simpson and Doug and say, hey, we got to close one or two of the routes because we can't get past Broadway because it's flooded. The very next day when that water goes down on Broadway, I can put a bus on that road and not get stuck. Why? Because it's all sandstone or rock. I believe that route is now open for us to go up there. That's what's awful fair. Our bus goes as well. But the roads are open. A day later, it was flooded. So these are conditions that, and in my experience where I've been at several K-12s, that I haven't experienced before as far as the size of this district, geographically, and where we have to take our buses in the dirt roads that we have to travel on. So, and we also do like to be able to do, we did state mandates that we do inspections every summer for our buses to the gym. And I like that. My whole plan, I'm used to it, is we do state inspections of buses every month. You're not getting them all done each month, but we're looking at each one of the buses every month. On our HVAC. We can't do that because of our mechanics are just, they're working 60-hour weeks, non-stop. So my supervisors. We got to find a way to alleviate that one way or the other. And right now we're 5 drivers short. We have 2 that said they're going to be here. One's already qualified to drive, but until August gets here, we really don't know.
So I'm prepared to support it. I mean, I know there's some pain, and I think we need to do it for the right reasons. That's to, I think, improve or reduce the bus ride times. I do see the value in fewer bus routes, fewer drivers. Mechanics shouldn't be driving buses, they should be taking care of buses. However, if we're going to use the, an economic cost-benefit analysis or what have you, I really think it should be a little more thorough and should include cost of transportation over time to replace buses, kind of what that piece looks like. That may not be, to me, that's not the driving reason to do it, but it needs, we need to make sure we really understand what the true costs are. I'm a little concerned about the impact on the VOTEC students, kind of how that affects their schedule during the day. Is this going to disincentivize them to enroll in VOTEC because now their day is really long? And then I think my concern as well was impact on the staff. It sounds like maybe the daycare option maybe would help alleviate that. So those are my 4 main concerns. But I agree, I think we should look at trying to find a solution that utilizes this approach that we're talking about tonight. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
We haven't even talked about how this would impact extracurricular activities, sporting events. I know Mr. Chappell is here. Can you enlighten us on what you think that's going to have on the kids that play football? I mean, if we do go to later start times, later getting out, I mean...
My biggest issue is the OSSA tells us we can only miss so many days of school. If you miss part of the day, that counts as a day. So, if we were at the backside, if we have events that start at certain times and we have to get out, say, like right now, we don't have to get out 6th hour at any time because the way our schedule's set. If you push that back even farther, whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, then it could dig into some of our 6th hour. Now, we can make some changes like the 4:30 start times to 5 o'clock times when it's us versus someone else. But when it's like a track meet or a tournament that we're involved, whether it's baseball, softball, those type of things, then there can be an issue on days. I know we had, I wish I had Mr. Throckmorton here. We had probably, I guess we missed 10 and then we asked for 15. And we had probably, and the good thing about that is most of the time there's really, really good students. So it's students that might miss 14, 15 days, but they're still usually A students or B students. It could create a possible problem. I know one thing we had mentioned or talked about with Doug was the, if we were the last ones, looking at the first hour scenario, like a 0 hour. We just kind of been throwing all those things through our heads. But, and then my biggest concern too was possibly from the standpoint of, especially if you take some of my high school coaches dealing with that have elementary kids, you're talking, if you're saying 45, you're talking about 6 and we're the last ones, you're talking about those guys going 12, 13 hours a day. Some of those guys. Because, that's the effort they put into some of the things that we do so our kids can be successful. I know a lot of schools may not do that, but I know a lot of our coaches do.
John, you talked about the 8:35, you talked about 7:45, but that was Sunday. What do you see that as is there issues with that?
Just from an athletic perspective, I see no problem. I don't see any problem with that. I know one thing, I may be stepping out of line here, but since we're kind of all just talking, was I meant to text you, but I texted Deb Russell. Was the possibility of, and I know that there's certain scenarios of using possibly even teachers as drivers. I know that those come in that double dipping situation. I know that like Marsha Hogan for years had a CDL, and I know when they called upon her, she drove, and of course they paid her for that. Now it's hard to get anybody to get a CDL. It's kind of a real pain. They've made it a pain. You're talking about 4 days, 8 hours, plus you have to be probably spend 15, 20 hours studying before that. You have to take the test, and you have to go to the actual classes that take, I believe it's 32 hours, and then you have to come back and practice driving the bus, and you're talking about a major...
Do they have to maintain a DOT physical and all of that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a real, I mean, it's not fun to have if you don't need it.
It's every year. I know that there was a time, I believe, when Dr. Simpson first got here, you made an offer to someone, you made offers to people. I was actually a health teacher at the time, and he made an offer to pay people in the springtime, and I think that's how we kind of got through the spring, because a lot of those guys were, as soon as school was out, you'd go, and anybody had a CDL, like me being a baseball coach, it was an area right after the state tournament for about 15 days maybe.
We also looked at, and didn't get a lot of, I think we had one taker and it didn't last, but a scenario where somebody, and this was prior to putting them on full-time where they got the benefits, but having someone that had 2 separate responsibilities. One is bus driving, and then in between that, custodial responsibilities, and taking them to an 8-hour day. I think we had one person that tried it for a while, and they didn't really want to do it. We were very short on custodial staff at the time when we made that offer.
Did we have a gentleman, what's the name of our trainer now? Our bus trainer, the gentleman?
Josh? Greg?
Pastor, other gentleman. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one time I believe he was even substitute. Even Paul, yeah. He'd drive and then he'd substitute if the substitute was where he was off the 7th hour at the end of the day. And then he could get back and drive the bus in the evening.
We've explored a lot of creative scenarios through the years, and just not had a lot of success with it.
But I know from the athletic standpoint, the second one would create a lot more problem for us. That still doesn't leave the elementary kid being home with without the secondary kid.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that at all.
Vice versa.
So there's 2 issues: route times and bus driver shortage. Is that fair? So I'm not sure. So apparently, Ron, you talked about paying bus drivers more. I think that would definitely alleviate our bus driver shortage. So we'd still have the longer bus routes, so we don't fix that. But we go to running 2 routes.
Do the bus drivers, like for you mentioned Edmond and Middale and the increase, do they get the benefits also that we're giving ours? Because that accounts for some money right there.
Yes, they do. Everyone that I know of, that's why we went to this, was because everyone else was doing that, and they had them on a 6-hour day, and so they're on benefits too.
Doug, do we know where we fall in line with some of these other surrounding schools pay-wise?
Cody looked at it today. We tried to look, just the one, they're not going to drive all the way to Putnam City to drive, that's too far. So we kind of looked, we know Coyle uses a lot of their staff, kind of what we talked about, of course, they're not a large school, to make theirs work. Cody, do you have some numbers there?
Edmund, $14.01 an hour. Piedmont, and Piedmont's a different, how they do it, it's $23 per route. So I guess if they do the morning route and the afternoon route, they get paid $20 for each route. If they get done in an hour and a half, they get done in an hour and a half. I've been talking to them about that. Enid's $15.41. Deer Creek's $14. Stillwater's $11.33. That's the kind of surrounding areas that I got. Oklahoma Public Schools is $13.11. Mustang's $13.69. So some of the numbers right there.
And how much did you say we're paying, Cody?
$12.50.
So the numbers that you just presented, is that starting wage or that's average?
That's a new driver.
A new driver.
Can we talk a little bit about discipline too? I'm looking at that sheet. Discipline, I recognize that we were at 1 or 2 grades originally in each school, and now we're at up to 5 grades, doing with kindergarten. But you would think if you're adding older, younger kids together, I mean, the discipline would be increasing, but on most of the schools, it's not. It's decreased. Except for Charter Oak, and I don't know what's going on there, but they look like they got a problem with discipline out in that area in general. You understand what I'm saying? That if we're adding more grades, you'd think the discipline would be increasing instead of decreasing on these schools. But it's not.
Well, I don't know of a time that Guthrie never has had secondary and elementary on the bus together.
They've always had that.
They've always had that. And, you know, there are years you have more than you do, you know, from year to year. You can have more, you can have less. It just depends on the maturity of the kids at the time. But I guess I'm going back to before we went to neighborhood schools, we talked about the bus routes. The time of the bus routes would be reduced because going to neighborhood schools. And obviously, they're not. So what makes us think that the staggered times are going to do it? I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Cody, is it a fair statement that in most cases they are reduced?
If we didn't double the buses, well, early we were fully staffed. What was our bus times at the early beginning of the year?
We were at 45 minutes. An hour and 45 minutes.
Was the longest?
The average time we got back and everything.
Was the average?
I'm talking about delivering the kids, not the amount of time the bus is on the road, but from the time they
That's
deliver.
what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the 20 minutes getting there.
Okay.
It's an hour and a half.
So
Yeah.
by the time they left to deliver kids, it was an hour and 45 minutes by the time the last one got dropped off.
The last one, yes.
So really going to neighborhood schools in the routing, we weren't able to really reduce, because I think our goal was to try to be around an hour.
Did we reduce?
Yes, we reduced it probably from, well, the average is now an hour and a half. It was probably averages 2 hours or a little more than that before. We reduced that. That's why I think it's reduced in the discipline issues that we have.
Discipline issues.
Now we're trying to get down to just the 1 hour. And that's why we're going to 50 minutes. It's pretty solid with 1 hour and 50 minutes. Once we start picking up kids.
But, so you said discipline issues went down?
I think he said that.
Because they actually went, they almost doubled with shorter bus routes.
Doug, didn't you localize those to buses that had been doubled up?
Well,
No, these are all that the transportation gave me. But like Charter, the ones that are doubled up, Charter Oak was one that's doubled up. And so that's why I was saying that discipline is higher, because they had 70 kids. That was where we were trying to do the mile radius, but not, we were trying to go as the crow flies. But some of those kids would have to walk 3 miles to get a mile. And so that's why we ended up having to double some of that up.
well, and Charter Oak is not figured in the 17-18, so you've got 85 more.
But you got the same.
No, but if you look here, you take the previous year, 279, add the 85 from Charter Oak, gives you 364, 71 more.
Well, but you got to remember, each year compares the same number of kids. So you,
It's just different.
yeah, it's just, so you can't necessarily attribute it to the site. as you compare, but the same number of kids are being transported each year. So,
Well, I'm gonna go back to Exhibit A because this really bothers me, and I'm gonna give you guys what I received in committee meetings. Because numbers is what I'm sorry, I didn't hear you got extra. Numbers is what I usually look at. This is what was given to us in committee in March. And if you look at your Exhibit A and compare it to this, you have, looking at Exhibit A, well, I guess I gave my copy out, but you're adding item number 440, 442, 530, 550, 580, 582, and 860. And then you're changing the time frame. So that really bothers me coming into this meeting because I had looked at numbers, I had really studied my numbers, and then when you look at what was given to us in March, that's highlighted in red, it says 5-year analysis September through March. And you look at Exhibit A, 5-year analysis September through March, those numbers are not the same. So I get frustrated at things like that because numbers is what I like to look at. And I came in here and have just been totally blown away of what I had studied and looked at because of the issuance of the reports are different and more categories are added. So it's just something I have to go back and just restudy. And it's frustrating.
So I guess, yeah, so even looking at years 14, 15, 15, 16, all the way through today, I mean, they're vastly different. So the different comparisons tonight than what we had.
Yes, and that's what, that's what's discouraging about looking at this for me.
Michelle, on Exhibit A, when you have what's highlighted on your repairs and maintenance, that says September through March. Is that September through March or is that September through June?
I don't have a copy of.
No, Exhibit A, the one the board members got.
I know, I don't have a copy of what she's looking at with March. Doug just went to
But
run a copy of it. so we can see it.
I'm asking you on Exhibit A,
I know.
is that September through March on what you're providing, or is that September through June?
It is July through June. I did not correct the September through March.
Okay.
Everything on this Exhibit A is July 1 through June 30th of 2018 versus 2019. So it is just a typo error there for the 5-year analysis. It is July through June
On the repairs.
on the repairs in yellow.
Is that June 1st, I guess?
June 30th.
July 1 through June 30th, so this
So when did you cut this off, since we're not in July yet?
I just updated this for Doug last Thursday, and I still use the dates through June 3rd.
Okay.
June 3rd.
Cody, I know you probably don't have this information in front of you, but do you know how much money we're talking about that we had to outsource for maintenance and repairs on our buses due to our drivers being out on routes and not able to perform those repairs? I mean, what kind of numbers are we looking at? I mean, was it a significant impact on that? Yeah, I figured you probably would, just because that's kind of a really... it's just kind of good information to have, what it truly costs the district as far as outsourcing some of those services and repairs.
I know I've had a lot of people talk to me about it, and I just feel like I know it's hard to find bus drivers, but I feel like we're going to be hiring a lot more staff and possibly teachers if we do go to these staggered times. And I think we'll be looking at Doug hiring more people than Cody trying to hire bus drivers. That's the feel I'm getting from the community. The community's gone through a lot of change going to neighborhood schools. They've been very supportive with us with the bond issue. I just feel like we can find 3 or 4 more drivers out there somewhere, tucked away. Pull them out of Missy's Donuts.
But, yeah, so I mean, I agree. I mean, we're just going to have to pay more money, but it still doesn't address the bus route times. So it would be nice to try and find a solution there.
Well, I think we may need to add another route or two.
Would you mean additional routes with additional costs? I mean, it's something we could look at it to compare the two options. Add bus drivers, increase pay, or reduce routes and go stagger start times.
I mean, we went from 24 to 21 routes. Maybe we need to go back to 24 routes if we can get those drivers, because when we originally talked about the savings of neighborhood schools and the transportation, we were talking anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 in savings, and that didn't happen. And we've been able to absorb all that and move forward. And so maybe we need to look at increasing some routes, get as many drivers as we can, and then see what we can increase to avoid that hour and 45-minute route time, or staggered, or the delayed routes that happened years ago.
Well, I think it's important. The goal tonight was not to reach a decision. The goal was to make sure the board was informed of all of the issues that we face. There's not a clear solution here. And unfortunately, if there were, you guys know if there were, I'd just come with a recommendation and given you the reasons why, but it's not clear. And it's, my fear is with where they are building homes in our school district, this challenge will only grow. And I think that the board needs to be aware of that, needs to be made aware of that, needs to be made aware of the challenges if we don't do the staggered times, and then the challenges if we do. And we have had, as you can tell, lots of discussion among staff about this. And there wasn't a clear winner among staff either. And just like I knew there wouldn't be a clear winner with the board. So I guess at least we shared it with you.
Is it possible for teachers to drive? Do they have to have a planning hour, their 6th hour, in order to drive in the evenings? Is that, I mean, I don't know the schedule, I don't know their contract, I don't know the busing way.
I guess it would be, if you're going to pay them a stipend to drive. Right now, we have one driver that drives from Robbie's building. He drives, he has a planning period 7th hour, correct, Robbie? Jack? He doesn't anymore? So he goes and gets his bus during his planning period, and as soon as school is out, he drives afternoon only. He doesn't drive mornings. And then he's just on that scale, like we talked about, 1250 at 0, and he's been doing it now for probably since we had a shortage. And so wherever he's at on that scale is what he gets paid an hour. It usually takes him a couple hours to do that.
Do you feel, Mr. Rainwater, do you feel that there are staff members out there that would be willing to drive a bus? I mean, that for the extra pay? I mean,
I know, I think Nancy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we could have kept a special ed teacher if that was the case.
if we could have allowed them to drive a bus?
And it was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's off, but it was actually the position that we are still trying to hire to this day. That's your.
Why would we not allowed it? I guess that's my
The
question.
issue that we run into is, as a board, we've told them that your contract time, you can't double dip. Okay, so you can't get paid until 3:40. You guys remember we had the big Indian tutoring issue? You guys remember that as a board? Where they cannot start getting paid till 3:45 to tutor. Well, kids get out at 3:15, and so if they're given instruction for 30 minutes, they can't get paid for it.
We can't by law pay them when they're pay them for an additional item when they're under contract. It's kind of like, remember, extra duties stipends are for things after the contract.
Outside of contract hours.
So to answer your question, the issue we would have with that is we would love to be able to do it if they don't have a conflict. Maybe in this case right here that we were talking about is the amount of IEPs that are out there that the teacher would have to be performing maybe before or after school. Not saying that was the case, but when you start saying, okay, you're going to drive a bus, but you can only get paid for, if you're going to drive 2 hours, you only get paid for an hour and a half of it. What's incentive for them to do that? I guess you could increase the pay for that amount of time if you wanted to do that. To make it even.
Can you give a teacher, if it is a teacher or a staff member that's on contract time, rather than paying them hourly, can you just give them a flat rate, like a flat rate route rate?
Like this one?
Yeah, like the route, per route. I guess that's, I still, does that call, is that double
Maybe
dipping
that's
still?
how they get around that.
Maybe that's that's a question we probably need to ask Piedmont, see if that's why they're doing.
And our attorneys.
Just to throw this out there, though, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit with you because we've got negotiations and Michelle's here. One thing we're not thinking about is now that if you do use those teachers aren't doing as much duties. And so that's a big thing in negotiations is duties right now. And so if they're driving in the morning and an afternoon, they're only allowed to do one, but you may have several teachers that are doing several duties, and that's kind of became an issue in negotiations.
Which would make it worse on the ones that weren't driving to try to cover all those duties.
Just doing that. Something.
Does the school pay for the CDL to go get tested?
They pay for CDL.
Do we?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Pay for all the training. Only we don't pay for is their background check.
I'm sorry, they're what? Background check.
The permit and their background check, what they have to pay for themselves.
While they're training, they're paid as a bus monitor, which is minimum wage. While they're working.
Which helps kind of reimburse them for the permit and hopefully the background check.
So it sounds like they're utilizing us for free training. That was, a lot of them are. I mean, that's what I heard earlier, right?
In some cases, yes.
So do we have a requirement they pay it back if cost of that training if they
And to
don't,
stay employed for
say 6 months or
6 months or something before you, or you have to reimburse them.
they take it out of the last paycheck?
That's paycheck.
Absolutely.
Put it in their contract.
That's pretty common.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
I mean, that should,
Just a week, they probably don't have any money built up. That's been our issue.
well, yeah, if they're leaving that quick.
Usually they're going to stay with us. It's that, they get done with the training and done, at 7:25, they stretch out very far.
I mean, I don't know, and it's, because I'm so all over the place with this whole thing, and like Gina said, maybe the solution is to add additional routes, but at the end of the day, even if we're still going to have the same issues, because we're still, when somebody doesn't show up for work, we're still going to have to pull a maintenance person or somebody to cover a route.
We're going to have to pay a lot
John's got
more.
something.
Or we're going to have to pay a lot more. I mean, we're not really fixing the problem by adding routes, in my opinion.
In some ways making the problem worse, because
Because you've got more positions to.
add all the routes you want to if you don't have somebody to drive them.
Right. Right.
It's going to be very expensive. I mean, purchasing the buses,
Yeah.
and then to keep that number of drivers, our pay is going to have to be a lot higher than it is.
Cody, how many buses do we have right now that are only held back and used, that are not in use but usable? That are not activity buses?
4 or 5.
Okay.
Do you have something to say, John? Your wheels turning? Oh, okay.
You said if I get extra drivers, he raised his hand because he gets called every morning.
He's just ready to go.
But, we went from 24 to 21 drivers, and we increased our cost by $23,000. So, so
I know.
you can look at it a lot of different ways.
To understand this on that statement, I have been short every year I've been here. I've never finished the year before I started. So when we're comparing this to last year, whatever, understand that we had to shut down 2 years ago. We had to shut down 24 and 23. We had no more drivers. We had to double up. And we had to double up a lot this year. There's 5 or 6 routes that were down. So there hasn't been a year gone by that I've finished with full crew. I don't really expect it here sometimes. But we've got to find a way to take the stress. The last 45 days from spring break until the last day of school was the hardest 45 days I've gone through in a long time with transportation. We're calling shop every day. We're calling coaches. We really had to get outside the box and everybody through school and move home. And I've been there, it's like in my 4th year, I don't know if I said this before, now I can't remember what I said, but in all this time, I've had a full crew 2 days. And this is going to my 4th year. I've had a full bus driving crew 3 days, almost 3 years so far. And some of it's workers' comp, some of it's extended illnesses and stuff like that when they're gone. But it does take a toll. It affects our kids as well as anybody else. When we're having to shut down sled routes, and we got to go around and change those pickup times in the bus and the people, and the drivers and the monitors and those buses, it affects our children as well. And we got to call the parents, and every time we do this, we got to call, we just shut down one route for a couple of days. We notify every single parent what's going on. They'll know, hey, you're going to be on bus 5 instead of bus 6. And it happened a lot, especially the last 45 days. And it's not just the bus drivers and the mechanics and my supervisors that are going through this. Our students are going through this as well. So that's why we're bringing this up and talking about tonight. Will we get 21 bus drivers before school starts? I can't answer that question for you. Will they all come back to all the 21, 20 that said they come back and one did resign at the end of the year? I don't know. Until August gets there.
If we go to staggered times, Cody, and go down to the 15 routes, how many drivers are you going to try to have on staff full-time? Are you going to try to have the 17, 18?
We're trying to have the 18.
That's why I remember my slide.
And what will these, if you have everybody show up, what will these 3 extra people do for the day?
They'll be doing what other school districts do. They will actually be monitoring, helping other regular bus route drivers. They will be on buses working, making sure that some of our issues, remember, we're not in a 700 or 800 square foot classroom with the teacher facing the kids. we're in a 230 square foot bus with the back turned to the kids. And they're trying to stay in windshield time. They're having to look in their rearview mirror. And so those extra people, we get full staff, we get extra people to be on those buses on the regular routes, helping them. But we have certain routes, we know where they are. We have certain kids that are just our kids, right? And remember, they're going through all day. I watch them in the hallways when I walk in the buildings. You know, the teacher and everything is doing this or this or this or this. And I finally figured out, like talking, keep talking down, okay, talk a little bit, okay? And so when they finally get out of school, and they get on these buses, they weren't the kids.
Yeah.
All right? They're just our kids. And they want to go out there and they want to talk. And so we allow the talking and everything, but when you get a bus with 70 kids on there, in a 230 square foot bus, with your back turned to those kids,
Hang on.
yeah. Hang on. It's a short, when we call this, and we all said it before, this is an extension of the classroom. That's what we tell the parents, that's what we tell our student writers. This is part of the classroom in this bus. But they're still kids. And they know when, just like my kids do, all 5 of them. On my back concern, they're my kids, all right? And so they're doing the same thing on the buses. And especially when you have secondary kids and elementary kids together, like Doug's kids learn, they learn new stuff on that bus. We don't do that in grade school. That's why we have elementary, that's why we have secondary schools. We separate them. It's just some of the dialogue that we're talking about. I'm trying to give you as much information as I can of what we're going through. All right, that's what this is all about tonight. So that you'll know that, hey, this is, when I say this to you guys, this was my rough this year in transportation. It was difficult this year, because I didn't know some mornings, I'm going from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock every day, doing everything else we're doing as well. And they're our precious cargo. They're very precious to us. And we want to be able to get them to and from safely. And when you're asking people to do what we're asking them to do, my guys have done one heck of a job getting everything done. Some days they come in, I'm amazed that two school and from school the way we did on time. Because the routes got shorter and shorter as the year went on. I don't want to say learn the routes. We had to learn all new routes this year. Even our subs ended up with the routes. Our best subs that had all these routes memorized in the past no longer had them memorized in the past because they were new routes this year. So it was a dramatic change for transportation, dramatic change for teachers, dramatic change for our student riders. And we really did well this year. But it was, the last 45 days, it was interesting. I'll be honest. It was a ride.
So currently we have 21 bus routes. How many bus driver positions do we have that we try to fill? 21, or do we try to staff more than that?
21 positions that are posted. I mean, that are open, that we can fill, we had to, that are available.
So we try to staff up to 21, even though we have 21 routes.
We have a couple of sub drivers
Okay.
as well. So right now we're 5 bus drivers. He's counting the subs in here, I believe. We have 5 positions that are open right now in transportation for bus drivers.
But, I mean, my question is, if you say we go to 15, you still want to try to staff at 18?
We try to keep 18 in our 2 subs.
So are we using that same approach currently with the 21 routes? Say, what are we trying to staff for 24? So there's part of our problem, but
we could never get.
But you can't find them to begin with.
Yeah, that was our issue. We could never get to the point that we had 21. Can we go find a couple extras? We always have a future position bus driver. We just can never get positions.
Yeah.
We want to keep it at 18 so we can keep mechanics in the shop.
No, I understand that. I mean, and ideally we
just said overtime.
Yeah. Ideally we try to keep 24 now, but we just can't find. There's not that many in the local job market. Yeah.
And they get frustrated. I think I said this in community. I don't know, but we've had our last 3 that gone through this training in the school. One of them came up to the stop sign, and they had a black crossing lane or whatever it was, and the tire just touched it. He stopped and everything. It's not a 5-point deduction. It's not a 10-point deduction. It's failed. You got to come back later on and do if they touch a curb, it is a fail. And so when John's talking about having to get tougher and tougher to get license for these people, that's what we're talking about. They're becoming more and more stringent because there's safety issues going on. We understand that. But when you get those people out there, I didn't know one was going to come back. He failed 3 times before he finally passed it. The last week of school, he finally passed it for a part-time driver. But it took him 4 times to pass it.
We have educated guys with a master's degree that drive motorcycles, drive dump trucks, flunk it twice and come back. It's done.
It was much easier back when I did it, and I failed it the first time.
Are you going to try to take time?
Yeah.
You're trying to,
Is there anything else that we want to have a discussion with the parties that we have here tonight?
Do put a plug in. If you know anybody wants to drive a bus, please call us.
282-5919. Go on the website and fly now if you want to.
That's right.
Any discussion?
Still haven't discussed really what's going to do to the parents of kids. If their high school kid is going later or their elementary kid's going earlier stuff, that's a whole other issue we haven't got into yet. It's not just our teachers, it's also the parents of the student, other parents of students. We haven't even addressed that.
No discussion.
Okay, so agenda item number 7 is discussion regarding start and end times for Guthrie Public Schools for the 2019-2020 school year. I don't know if we've kind of more or less covered this, but what the proposed times are. I mean, are we just...
Those were times that we discussed, like Mr. Capel and I, if you guys decided that secondary was going to go later, John thought that 335 wasn't perfect, but it was better than the 350 that was talked about. And so, not that that's ideal. And then we just said, okay, at 745 better, they have more practice time, they get out, but you're losing sleep time, which, you know, for the kids have to get there early.
I don't buy that philosophy because they're not going to sleep. They don't put their phones down long enough to sleep anyway, so I don't think 30 minutes is going to make or break them. And I think it prepares them for life because you don't get to sleep in when you got a job.
So studies show that teenagers need more sleep than adults.
Research shows that there should be not a school start before 8:30.
There is one state, I'm not going to name it because I know the political flavor of the room, but there's one state that had a proposal in their state legislature this year that secondary schools could not start before 8:30. It failed, but because of local control as much as anything. But that's.
So this 8:35 start time for our secondary, was that based on the data, the science that are supporting that? Yeah, I assume that it is, yeah.
You know, I talked with the principal at Stillwater High School because when I worked there, we started the high school at about, I think, 8:05, and we let out at 3:10, and the elementary started there at about 8:45 or something like that, and let out about 3:30. And you know, Stillwater jumped into it based largely on the studies that supported for improved learning environment for secondary students. He, after, I think they've done this for 4 years now maybe, he didn't really see an improved learning time for the secondary kids, but something that they didn't see coming, that they found at the elementary level, is they had large jumps in their, and his wife is an elementary principal in the district. They had large jumps in their elementary scores when they did that, because of course Stillwater was starting their elementary day. It put a lot more instruction before lunch at the elementary level when they did that. And so there wasn't a huge benefit to the secondary, but the elementary had a benefit by moving so much of that instruction to before lunch. And I think they were at 8, maybe 8:55, 9 o'clock, I don't know, start time, I believe.
Wow,
And it's been that way for years.
that's a real burden on parents. I mean, that's another whole issue too. Starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, what parents start their jobs at, I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other session. Like we said about staggered times. I know we need an answer. I mean, we don't need it tonight, but I know we got to figure it all out. But I'm concerned with, what it does to as much as the teachers as the parents, is what's going to happen to them. I don't know. There's no easy answer, is there? No.
If there was, I'd have brought you a recommendation at a regular board meeting. That's why we had a special.
Yeah.
Is there a state law that so many minutes in a day or so many hours in a day? Because I'm looking at Edmond starting at 7:40 and ending at 2:30, and we're proposing a 7:45 to a 2:45. Is that just based upon what their class time is, or their lunch? I mean, is that?
Some of that, I wouldn't want to speak for the Edmond administration, but my guess is some of that is based on traffic patterns, on when those release times are. You've got to obviously meet your 1080 hours of instruction, and then how you form your school day. A lot of that will be transportation patterns with your busings and your routing to get them to run the second route, and then sometimes it's traffic patterns around the school, because I think Doug, the ones at Edmond, the later elementaries were in one part of Edmond and the earliers were in another part of Edmond. Because I remember we talked about that.
That's what Mr. Graham had said when he was the principal. That's why they had 2 different start times. He didn't say they're segmented. These elementary start at this time and others at.
So it's just state mandated you get your 1,080 instructional hours, and then you can structure your day. Gotcha.
I'm sorry, what did you say we have to meet daily for?
No, it's 1,080 hours.
Okay, that's right. Okay, gotcha. I thought you said 10 hours a day. No, 1080 a year. Okay. Yeah.
Any further discussion? I think we've got a lot of information. Cody, thank you very much. Doug, thank you very much for all your time that you've spent on this. I know you guys' hearts are in the right place, and this is a tough conversation for everybody. I mean, like Dr. Simpson said, there's not a right answer. So hopefully we've got some things to think about and can, I don't know, come up with something that we could maybe come to some sort of compromise that will benefit everyone. So I guess agenda item number 8. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Madam President, I make a motion we adjourn.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Davis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Flagg.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.